Hello, this is Aaron at Powerpopaholic.com, and I am talking to one of the legendary artists from the 80s, Richard Barone from the Bongos. And the Bongos have a new live album that is going to be released very, very soon. Richard, how are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm really glad that this record is coming out because we did make it in 1985, and it's been in the vaults ever since. Never was released by RCA Records, and it was a really fun record to make.
That's awesome. I want to go back a little bit to the history of the band because when I learned about you, I learned about your band pretty much in the 90s when it was pretty
Yeah,
almost over,
sure.
and
Well, it's never over.
never over really.
It's never over, and the 90s are just as good a decade as any other decade to learn about a band. It's all once you make music, it's for all time, I think.
Yes, yes. And I think also back when you had started, you were considered, the bongos were considered really innovative for its time. I mean, power pop at that time was really the milieu of the Knack and, Paul Collins beat. So you had really strong guitars, but it was really still based on an old rock and roll sound. And
Hmm.
I think what the bongos did, which was unique at the time, was to bring in more new wave rhythms, dance rhythms to it, which I
Sure.
don't think had been done by anybody else previously.
No.
So you were the cool band that were it for people in the know at the time.
The Bongos were part of the art scene here in New York, as well as the rock and roll scene. So we were playing when we first started. We were besides playing at Maxwell's in Hoboken, which was our hometown, and that was the club that we helped start. By being the first band that played there. Also, we were on the art scene playing in art galleries and stuff. So the music was a mix of what was happening in art and music and film and all kinds. It was a movement in New York in the early 80s that we were part of and we're really, really happy to be part of. And that influenced how the style of the music evolved too. Some of the clubs we played at were dance clubs. And so that affected what kind of beats we would have, but the guitars, I played my Rickenbacker and it was all about, the Flaming Groovies or Badfinger, but it was mixed in with different kinds of rhythms. We experimented a lot with rhythms, and I think you're right. We did come up with a unique sound, and it was well received.
Yeah, I would say that, unlike other bands at the time, you really leaned into your name, the bongos. I mean, Drums Along the Hudson has plenty of bongos in it,
Oh yeah. Well,
and the
the drummer,
rhythms are the
yeah,
things that really make you stand out. I mean, other than some of the period things that I would say like The Cure or Bow Wow Wow or any other kind of new wave group at the time was doing, you were incorporating those traditional guitar elements
yes.
into those rhythms.
It all goes back to the Beatles for us. We loved especially the early Beatles, like the Cavern Club Beatles,
Yeah.
first couple of albums. So there's a lot of that, and I think what we were trying to do, I would say, was also to kind of merge some decades. Like, there's a bit of Buddy Holly in the bongos.
Yeah.
Sometimes those rhythms come from like Richie Valens. The early 50s. We liked all kinds of rock and roll. We especially like power pop. We especially like things like that. Like I mentioned, Badfinger.
Badfinger.
And the other groups that you mentioned, those new wave sort of power pop groups that you mentioned, that wasn't really a focus of ours, and we certainly didn't try to compete with them. We just did our own thing. We had between Rob Norris, the bass player, and I, we must have had 4 to 5 thousand vinyl albums in our apartment, and it covered just, a lot of rock and roll. And we let those influences, because we're fans of so many bands and stuff, we let those influences come through with our music. But there's an undercurrent of the Beatles a lot in the
Yeah,
songs.
especially with the melody lines.
Yeah.
I hear that a
Harmony
lot.
and the harmonies, yeah,
And
the
the
harmonies.
harmonies that are in there.
Yeah.
But what other than like some of those traditional power pop bands, when you were creating Drums Along the Hudson,
Hmm.
what were you listening to at the time? I mean, who were you hanging out? If you were playing live and stuff, who were you hanging out with?
Well, we really liked the group The Feelies from New Jersey.
Yep.
They're good friends of ours, and we were doing shows with them. We were doing double bills at that point with the Feelies, and they were a big influence on our rhythm guitars. I perform with Glenn Mercer of the Feelies now. We do a duo show called Hazy Cosmic Jive, which is a really fun. Um, glam kind of power pop show that we do here in New York and in the area once in a while. It's really cool because it's all covers. It's just songs that made us want to play guitars in the first place.
Excellent.
That's a lifelong relationship with the Feelies. So they were on our radar, but we were really signed to a British label, Fetish Records, and they had bands there. We went to England right away. We were only together a few months when we got signed to Fetish,
Mm.
and I went over to London and that's where we made Drums Along the Hudson. It's really Drums Along the Thames in some ways. We lived in Hoboken. We were along the Hudson River, which is right out here outside my
Right.
window. But I'm in Greenwich Village now in New York City. But the Hudson River was biased, but really we made an album in London, in Surrey, actually in England, and it has a lot of British influences. And we were performing at all the London venues, and we were seeing the earliest forms of Depeche Mode, and we met like the Culture Club and bands that were just starting at that era were at our shows, and so we were listening to a lot of the new wave British bands too, but again, not trying to really sound like anybody else. The Bongos always have like Buddy Holly in there and the Beatles, and then
Right.
it builds up from that. So also, one of the things that we try to do is do everything on guitars and not use much synthesizers. So we didn't have too much, electronic sounds. Once in a while we did, and we had a synth player for a little while called Dennis Kelly, who played some cool synthesizer lines. But we didn't make that our focus.
Right.
It was
Right.
all about the Rickenbackers and the guitars and the ringing guitars and I guess you would say jangling
Yep.
Rickenbackers. That was a big part of our sound. And it was just before there was a movement called jangle pop, really.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
but
you were at the cusp of all those of all that was coming
it
out
was
at that
great.
time, which
It's
was
great.
great.
It's funny because the Rickenbacker was actually suggested to me. I just bought a new one because we're going on tour, and I've been playing a Les Paul, like you have on your wall, I see.
Yeah.
I've been playing a Les Paul for a while now, but I had to get a Rickenbacker for these bongo shows, so I ordered a Model 330, and I remember that
Mm,
my first one was a 340. And it was Lou Reed who suggested it to me. I was 18 years old and
nice.
going to a guitar shop, and Lou was in there looking at guitars as he often was.
Was this at
And
Sam Ash
no, it was at a store called We Buy Guitars
Oh, okay.
on 48th Street in Manhattan. So it's a small shop, and they had like used instruments, And in the corner was a 1965 Rickenbacker. So I met Lou Reed. I was like I said, like I said, a teenager, and I said, Mr. Reed, I'm really happy to meet you. I'm a big fan. And he goes, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "I'm buying a guitar." And he goes, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "What do you like?" And I said, "The Beatles." I said, "Oh yeah, and the Velvet Underground too," because I really do. But he points to the Rickenbacker that was in the corner. It was not popular at that moment.
Right.
It was just sort of sitting in the store in a corner, neglected. And he said, "Maybe you should try that." And I did, and I bought it. And it really became the sound of the bongos.
Wow.
Later, Lou Reed was a big supporter of us and stayed in touch. And it was a great friendship that lasted till he passed. I mean, Lou Reed was
Wow.
an inspiration to me. But he
Eh,
picked my first Rickenbacker, and he picked it out for me.
That's excellent. What a great story. So tell me a little bit. Well, so you get signed in
Yeah.
1982
Well, we got
to
signed before 82. We were signed
no,
in
I meant
1980.
in the
Yeah.
United States to
We
a
got signed to Gem Records in
Gemma. Yeah.
1982 to do a compilation of all our British singles and EPs.
Yes.
So we had been doing a lot of we had a lot of stuff out in England, and it was great. It was really fun for us because we were Anglophiles. Um,
Perfect. So, along those, I mean, of course, you were basically also the general public learned about you more once you got on MTV with
oh
Numbers
yeah.
with Wings and everything. And
By that point, we had signed to RCA Records. We were on a
yep,
big tour with the B-52s in 82. As you mentioned, we had Drums Along the Hudson out. We got signed to RCA. And then, so in 83, we had our debut on RCA. We had already been making videos anyway, but we
right,
we really happily jumped into the MTV video because we like making videos. So we had one called Numbers with Wings for the song. And that was nominated at the first MTV Music Awards show, which was cool for us because we got to, be at that big event and be part of that and felt part of the music industry because we were just kids.
right. And here you are on the big time, put on the map
was
with
very
that
quick. It
with
was very
MTV as well.
sudden. It was very sudden for us. And we were on MTV quite a lot, and that was fun. And we got to do all the events with MTV, and they were very supportive. And that made that led us to do bigger tours because then we were known more nationally in the US.
Right.
In the UK, we were known, already. But in the US, that was the MTV was the big change.
Great. So after that, you guys developed Beat Hotel, right?
Yeah,
And you,
that was sort of written on the road, and it developed. It's why it's kind of a hotel in a way too. Beat Hotel is where William Burroughs and the Beat Poets hung out in Paris. But for us, it was just like we were always in hotels, you know. So
right.
that album did really well for us on RCA and got us. We did 300 shows that year, and that was the tour that the new live album came from. So it
That's
was
what I was just about to get to.
yeah,
You read
I
my
know
mind.
that. I know because you're a pro. But that Beat Hotel led to a huge tour, and we just thought, you know, the band was sounding great. Steve Scales of the Talking Heads had joined us at that point, and we had a bigger band with a lot of percussion. Talking about percussion, that was a great what is it, you know, engine room for the Bongos was we had Frank Giannini on drums and also Steve Scales on drums. It was fantastic, and we wanted to make a live album. So we had a truck. We asked RCA to get us a truck, and we did a full 24 track analog recording outside the venue
Wow.
in New Jersey, and that's what this album that's coming out now, 40 years later, almost exactly to the date, um,
Well, I have
is
to ask
finally coming out.
because of the time difference. Like,
Yeah.
what happened to those tapes prior, and how come it didn't come out earlier?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I usually bring home all our master tapes. I'm
Right.
one of those artists. I'm obsessive about trying to keep archives of what we do because I like what we did. It's like that's why we do it, you know. And I had the original master tapes here in my place, and it was never released because we were about to leave. It was a moment when we were offered another record company, another label had
Right.
been wanting to bring us over. It was Island Records. And Chris Blackwell, we had gone to the Bahamas. We started making a studio recording for Chris Blackwell. And that live album for RCA just sat on the shelves.
Mm.
You know, we re-signed to RCA recently. We're still an RCA act.
Oh, okay.
We re-signed in 2020, and we even did a Christmas song for 2023. I believe it came out at Christmas time. Was
Yeah, I think I saw that on
Rock the
Spotify.
well,
Yes.
listen to it. Rock the Christmas Cheer. That's like a new recording for RCA. So we're working with them, and we're doing this album on Gem is also
Mhm.
a mutual agreement with our. So the label is Gem Records, and then
Right.
below that it's RCA and Sony Music because it's
Very
all part
nice.
of. It really brings us all together on this one. You know, our love for indie labels, especially Gem, and also we really were quite happy with RCA, and they're a great label for us. It's a great home.
Excellent. Excellent. So, since, another thing I want to find out is about how the band sort of dissipated
Oh,
after I think the third album you had. Give me an
yeah.
idea of what happened, and are you still in touch with all those
Of
bandmates and
course.
everything?
The
And
Bongos are good. We're best friends. We're like brothers. The whole idea is that we're musicians with a lot of ideas and a lot of different tastes in music, and we wanted to do other things. We had been doing the Bongos at that point, so we toured, 5 years pretty much straight from 80 to 80, really 86. We were on
right,
the road. That huge tour was, let's say, exhausting in some ways.
I
And then
believe it.
we went right into the recording studio with Chris Blackwell to make another album after that. So that's after Beat Hotel, then a tour, huge tour, and then the Bahamas. We kind of felt a little I guess,
A little burnt
over,
out.
a little burnt out. And we
Yeah.
started to, so what happened was, we started doing some other things. Like James was putting a band, he wanted to do his own songs, more of his own songs, and
You
had a
had some
band.
solo albums as well.
I did a live show that again I really liked the live recording idea. The same team that recorded this album recorded my first solo album. So that the live album didn't the Bongos one didn't come out, but then a year later or a year and a half later I recorded a live album called Cool Blue Halo. And that album
Yes.
was sort of a chamber pop kind of record with cello and one of the first unplugged kind of records, certainly one of the first chamber pop records.
Sure.
That was done live at the Bottom Line here in New York. And it was just easier and more fun to make it as a live, instead of being in the studio all the time, which I was constantly,
Right.
the live album was a fun way to just do an album in one night. Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was my first solo album. Well, that took off for me, and I went on tour with Suzanne Vega for the next with her for almost a year, and then we went to Europe. We were touring for 2 years just on the Cool Blue Halo solo album. Then I got signed to Universal as a solo artist after that. through Marty Scott because he had an imprint
Right.
at Universal. So, you know, we did separate things, and then we would come back together to do a benefit concert, or if a friend of ours needed help, we would do a concert for them or things like that. And we've never really broken up.
Well, that's a
It's
good
just
thing to hear.
we're friends, and we just whenever the duty calls, we were there. But then we started doing some more recording together. We did putting together also these enhanced versions of the RCA records has been fun. If you check on Spotify, you'll see Numbers with Wings with
Yes.
maybe like 12 bonus tracks or so, or at least
Yeah, some of the live tracks there
eight
are
or
pretty
12.
good too.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have Beat Hotel with all the demos. So we've been supplying RCA Sony with enhanced material for each of the albums. That's been really fun too. It's really been an ongoing thing. I don't see it as that we just stopped. We just kind of did other things. And
What is the,
we live in
yeah.
different states too. We live in different
Oh, okay.
places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but now the way I've seen recording artists do it,
I
you can
know.
live in other countries and still
That's
record a
so
whole album.
I know. It's so different though, but
It's
yeah.
that's the way it is. But
I
so tell
know.
me, what's the future look like for the Bongos after this album? Is there going to be more collaboration, more new music coming out from you guys?
It's possible. It's anything is possible, really. I think right now the focus is gonna be on live shows. We really like playing together. It's a great band. That's really the core of it. The Bongos are a really fun live band, and we're looking forward to these dates coming up. So far, we have a few that are launching the album, but we've had offers now to do more dates.
Well, tell me. Let's promote it. Tell me where you
Okay,
guys are playing.
okay, we're gonna launch the album in the same area of the country where it was recorded, at the Jersey Shore,
Nice.
in Asbury Park on May 31st at the Wonder Bar. That's going to be the launch. And it's going to be a fun night because it's an all Gem Records night because opening is the Sins and
Yep.
then the Gripweeds and then the Bongos.
Oh wow.
It's going to be a
What a
great night.
bill. That's great.
I think it's a great bill. So that's going to be a fun night, and it's very close to the date of the original recording. Um, which was May 24th, 1985. And so the record comes out on May 23rd, 2025, and then the
Right.
show is on May 31st. Then we're going to do a secret show for those in Manhattan at the Bitter End, which is I live in Greenwich Village,
Right.
and I work with the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation. And the Bitter End is one of the most historic clubs in the city. So they asked, like, hey, why don't the Bongos play here? At first, I was like, well, it's not really a rock club, but it is in some ways. That's a club where Dylan was launched and so many folk rock
Yeah, and
artists.
you don't have CBGBs anymore, so that's the next best thing.
It's great. So we're playing a secret show in New York on the next day. So June 1st, it's a Sunday. We're going to be at the Bitter End in New York.
All right,
But
cool. So
yeah.
for all the people who don't know, give us the rundown about the name of the album and where it's going to be sold. Is it going to be sold on Amazon everywhere? And
I think it'll be everywhere. Like, it'll first be only on CD because it's going to be an exclusive Gem release. So for now, people are asking, is it on streaming services? And it's like, think of it as a movie. It comes out first in the theaters.
right.
So this is first as the record CD, and it's going to be available. I'm sure Marty is a great distributor, so he's going to have it everywhere that records are sold, that CDs are sold, and certainly at our shows, because then we can sign them for you.
Awesome, awesome. So
And
let me go.
it's called, let me tell you, it's called The Shroud of Touring.
That's what I wanted to bring up. Okay, great.
Live in 1985 is the subtitle.
The
Yeah.
Shroud of Touring, which is awesome. So I want one little anecdote before I let you go, which is
Okay.
since you've played so many great live events through the years, and I always ask this, is there one thing where you guys had a misfire somewhere and you recovered? I mean, I've heard these
Oh,
stories where guys literally
every
fall
show.
off stage and keep playing. Give
We
me a
have
situation like that.
Well, we've had that too. The Bongos are a very active live band. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Maybe have never seen this, but the Bongos, especially during that era that we were first talking about in the 80s, were very animated on stage. James and I both fell off the stage once, him on top of me with two guitars, two Rickenbackers, smashing. It was a high stage too. That was in Georgia and Atlanta. I ended up in the hospital that night. That was a
Oh,
brutal.
good.
We still went up into the encore though.
Really?
Yeah.
With like broken legs, you guys got up there, kept
I
playing.
was beaten up and I was bruised for weeks, but we went up and did the encore. Yeah, it was really fun. But I mean, we've had mishaps of all kinds. I think that was the most brutal, but
Well,
certainly
as
fell
long
off
as
the
you didn't have
stage.
a Frank Zappa moment, I think you're fine.
Oh well, or Patti Smith breaking her neck in Tampa, Florida,
Right, right, or
where I
something
grew
like
up. You know,
that.
it's like
I
yeah,
always
no, there was no broken bones, but there was a lot of bruises. Yeah,
Okay, well, I'm glad you guys recovered and you were so enthusiastic. And I know people, from what I understand, because I never saw you live in the, at the height of
yeah,
your fame, but I
yeah,
know that it was basically almost like a dance rave when you guys were
yeah.
playing.
Of course.
I've read
Well,
about it.
that's
That
why I
yeah.
fell off the that's why we fell off the stage. Yeah, a couple more than once, I think, but that was the most brutal. The Bongos
Uh,
were a very animated band. It was a lot of energy. The energy was the key. Like it was a high energy pop, you know.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard Barone. I appreciate
You're
the
welcome.
time. Everybody, check out the album when it comes out. Gem Records, the Shroud of Touring. Don't miss it. And if you can go see the show, see the shows. Please do.
Thank you so much.